ready to record?
And here we are.
And here we are. Hey everyone, this is McLean Warren with Rise and Shine and Rebate. We are here with special guests Andrew Mcconaughey and Norm Farrar. Thank you guys so much for coming on. I'm so excited for this particular podcast. Usually it's based on e-commerce and Amazon and all the stuff that goes into marketing and advertising online, but we thought we'd do a unique podcast today that's about music, because who doesn't love music and who doesn't get inspired by it or allow it to help them through ups and downs. So before we get started on that topic, I'm going to do a round table where everyone can introduce themselves and kind of give a background on who they are and where they come from. Dan, I'll let you go first.
Dan Trumbull, DanTrumbleConsulting.com, e-commerce, Amazon nerd extraordinaire, and lover of all things music from polka to death metal.
Brendan.
Hey guys, I'm Brendan Fields. I'm the founder of Rebate.com, a launch platform for Amazon sellers and 10-year e-commerce seller myself.
And Mr. Mcconaughey.
I'm Andrew Mcconaughey. I'm a singer-songwriter from Colorado. Music's been my full-time profession for over 5 years now. And I also started a music festival called Yarmany Music Festival out on the Colorado River in Colorado. And I went to high school with McLean.
No, you didn't. You were barely there. You weren't there for that. What are you talking about?
Went to high school.
What I meant was I got expelled from the high school that McLean went to.
You hung around the outside of the building.
Awesome.
But we can't talk about that here.
Oh, we can talk about anything here.
Yeah, Andrew's mom's going to see this.
Right.
She's like, I spent how much on your education and you became a band leader? What is going on?
They know what happened. I can assure you they know what happened.
Norm, you're up, buddy.
All right. Well, of course, I'm going to have a frog in my throat. But yeah, I sell some stuff on Amazon. I also provide a variety of different services, Amazon managed seller. I have a sourcing logistics company and a communications company.
So you're not busy at all.
I'm not busy.
Yeah. You just sit around and listen to music all the time, huh?
That's right.
So like I premised before, the reason for this podcast really is just to kind of go outside of the typical Amazon and e-commerce talk, because when it comes down to it, we kind of get all these podcasts that go around, we kind of get sucked up into the business aspect of it. And I think it's cool when we can bring a human touch to it, since we're obviously all humans and we go through all the same shit. So I recently, I guess it was like maybe a month ago, Norm, we were on a podcast with Danny Mcconaughey. Yeah. And the topic of that, what kind of inspired me to do this one is the topic of that conversation was burnout and the ups and downs people go through in businesses, and how we sometimes, go through, depression, anxiety, whatever you want to call it. I think most people can relate to that on some level. And Norm, I was really specifically inspired by your conversation regarding the ups and downs you've been through. So I thought maybe we'd first do like a brief on, the hurdles you've been through in business to kind of give everyone a background, and then we'll get into the fun part regarding music.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's so many. That's actually one of the things that you have to be when you get into business, right? If you're an entrepreneur, you have to figure out how you're going to handle stress and resilience, right? But yeah, I've had it where, believe it or not, I had two guys cook the books on me. They told me to invest $25,000. When I did that, it was supposed to be cash positive business. I was 28 years old. I was bringing my son home for the first day. I didn't say that on podcast, where I had to take him to the lawyers with me to basically file bankruptcy, because these guys had put me on the hook for almost, it was $420,000. And they were joint and several. They had all their assets split somewhere else, and I was the only one left on the line. And I was too young and too naive to see that. So that was one instance, and I had to get over that hurdle. So the next few years went by, and I had another business failure where I had a very successful business, hyper growth business, was tied into a bunch of Fortune 500 companies. And my main company, which I was working with them in 20 different locations, they ended up having a problem. And I won't mention it, but they had a problem on the stock market. Stock plummeted. They became a penny stock pretty much overnight, which meant every one of this is a $20 million contract for the one client, went under. All my locations in their locations went under. And I had to figure out a way to fight back. So in that instance, though, I had more control over the funds. And even though we were pretty close to being insolvent overnight, I was able to pay back the suppliers. So and I personally paid back at whatever, and it came back to actually help me out, because the one guy that I owed a lot of money to, a company came to me and said, "Oh, I need you to order all these." There were bags or something. Anyways, it was an order for $125,000, and it was almost, I don't know, probably 75% profit. And so the manufacturer that I just squeezed the money over to, I just finished paying him off. He took it, he gave me credit, and I was able to finance and get into another business because of that. So and so, I mean, there is some good that comes out of it, but at the time, you get kicked in between the legs too many times, and, you wonder, wow, how can I do this? And the other thing that's been real hurdles are people. I've had a lot of really good partners, but I've also had people that have just abused, just taken advantage of you. So it could be, this one guy was going bankrupt. I gave him $100,000 to help him start his business. I bought his business, brought it in the company. He goes out, and about a year later, cuts another deal from somebody else, leaves me with all his debt, thinking that this guy's a friend. And there's all sorts of this crap that happens. So it's very hard. It's very hard on, who you trust, who you don't trust. You do get a lot of, I don't like the saying, but spidey senses kind of go up when you meet people, right? And if you don't learn how to read people, or even if you do think you have to read people, you have to be a move ahead. So, and that's just the unfortunate part of doing business. But then you have incredible people. We talk about Danny, we talk about Steve Simonson that's out there. These guys, go out of their way to share knowledge and help you. And, so there's so many, there are a lot of good people, but the thing I think you have to learn, and you have to learn almost immediately, is that no matter how hard the stress is or how bad the stress is, and I remember being 28 and just basically throwing up blood, you're just, ulcers. And would I have been that bad off, sleepless nights? Now, it would probably bounce off my shoulders. Yeah. So, so nothing's that bad. Nothing ever is as bad, even during the bankruptcy. Nothing even was as bad at that time as what my own mind thought in my head.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not going to put all of this on you, Norm, although I appreciate you being so open and honest with the stuff you've been through. I would like to ask everyone else in this conversation if any of you guys have had those moments in your life or huge hurdles where you've had to really look back at your life and make some huge changes due to obstacles. Dan, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, first, let me just thank Norm for sharing so candidly. We've all been through that stuff. And to tack on to what you were saying, when you're in it, you feel like it's an insurmountable, like you're drowning in a pit of tar and you'll never escape. But you're right. When you get hindsight, you look back and you're like, so I think it's important to remember, like you point out, it's hard to see the other side when you're in it. But I think it's important to wake up every day, even if you feel like shit, even if you're going to cry through half your day, Wake up every day and go through the motions. Push yourself to inch forward every day, even if it feels like shit. One of my little tricks, and this isn't an original. I heard it from some general at a TED talk somewhere, is wake up every day, no matter what you have going on, and make your bed. Because no matter what happens during that day, you will have accomplished one small micro task. And then that one small micro task can lead to another and another and another. And it's a seemingly insignificant thing, but it really does change your perspective for the day. That and 4 cups of coffee. So seriously, Norm, though, thanks for sharing things so candidly. I myself have had businesses fail, partners screw me out of countless dollars, and you know, again, like you say, when you're younger, you fall for a lot of crap. But when you get older, you get a little better at judging people, and unfortunately, you have to be a little more litigious. Let's handshake on it, but then let's make sure we put it in writing too.
That's right. Yep.
You know, so.
What about you, Andrew, as a musician? You kind of are coming at this from a different angle than the rest of us, but what's been your experience in your field?
Well, after listening to you guys for about 2.5 seconds each, I realized maybe I am supposed to be on this podcast. I can relate to almost every side of what Norm you just said, from starting a music festival and, you know, myself being the original investor to bringing on several investors, and both having things on paper and not having them on paper, and the complications of what that can bring. And then Dan, what you said about making your bed every day, one of my current partners on the festival actually literally said that exact thing to me yesterday.
Yeah, it's funny. It's not mine. Like I said, gosh, I wish I could remember the guy's name, but it was moving to me. I heard it years ago.
It's William McRaven. He's a Navy SEAL.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's a great speech.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. I think I should remind myself to make my bed every day, because now 2 people have said it to me in 24 hours.
Tomorrow it's going to be your mom.
She's here. She'll catch me.
Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, Andrew.
No, well, I mean, you know, the resilience aspect of the music industry is something that, you know, I certainly took away from what Norm said there. And, you know, we certainly haven't had any big breaks along the way. We've certainly, you know, there's luck been involved that we're even still a band at this point, but, you know, you never know what life's going to toss at you, and being able to shrug it off and just keep moving forward every day, make your bed in the morning, micro task, one day at a time. You know, sometimes it certainly does feel like the world's on your shoulders, you know, whether it's financial or emotional weight, keeping you up at night. But, you know, you gotta get your sleep. That's something that my dad also told me is, you know, there shouldn't be anything in the world that prevents you from getting your sleep at night, because that's pretty much the most important thing to be able to wake up the next day and tackle it full strength. But yeah, that's just, I guess, the surface layer of being a musician and simultaneous concert promoter at the same time. But yeah, absolutely dealing with those things on a absolutely daily basis at this point.
Can I ask you, how has COVID affected you being in a band? I assume it's been a hard road.
We had tour dates and festivals and concerts planned through really September 2020, and March 1st through March 15th, I think, 2020, it all got canceled. And then it's been tried to reschedule every 3 to 4 months. And at the current moment, I'm just not even attempting to try to reschedule this stuff, because, you know, let's just wait until we can actually do it and then schedule it. But in short, it's taken me from having a career to essentially nothing. You know, I'm doing a live stream once every couple weeks. to kind of the diehard fans that are, you know, throwing the tips in the bucket and, you know, getting me through the next couple weeks. But at the moment, it's pretty bleak for the full-time musician. Certainly at the level where we're at, like I said, where, you know, the revenue streams from Spotify and Apple Music and all that stuff are still pretty minuscule in the grand scheme of things. So while there is some money trickling in from that, you know, the business itself has a ton of overhead and zero income. So wasn't able to get any PPP loans or SBA loans. And, you know, we're just lucky to still be chugging along here. You know, what, 8 months later. But I think there is, you know, there's some light at the end of the tunnel here with the vaccine, and, you know, there's some festivals that are starting to plan for 2021, which as a concert promoter, I'm extremely weary of something like that, just because, you know, trying to organize and project numbers for an event that you don't technically know the capacity to, and the capacity could change week to week going into the event. You know, I just don't know how you make smart business decisions in that sort of a environment. But there are some folks doing it, and, you know, I'm much more wearing my musician hat these days than concert promoter, and have been for quite a while. I started the festival in 2006, so, you know, here we are 14, 15 years later. And so I've been trying to focus on music in itself for the last 5 or 6 years. But, you know, certainly the pandemic makes you think about the risk involved in something like that. And it was just fate, I suppose, or sheer luck that in January of 2020, I purposefully took the year off from the festival and canceled the festival in January. And by the time the pandemic hit, I was in the clear on that one from a concert promoter standpoint. And that was just sheer luck. Because otherwise we would have had deposits out and, you know, permitting and everything. And we'd have been on the hook for all that with the artists. So a lot of festivals lost a lot of money because of COVID, obviously. So very fortunate that, you know, we just made that decision based on, you know, I just wasn't feeling like putting on the festival. Good year to do that.
Yeah, no kidding. That is sure luck. Brendan, you haven't really had a chance to say anything. I don't know if you can relate on any level, but passing the mic on to you.
Yeah, so I'll answer the question, but just a quick question for Norm. So if you could go back and change those challenges, particularly the one where you filed for bankruptcy, would you do it? Like, would you, if you could go back and change your route so you never encountered that situation, would you do it?
The only thing I'd change is those two guys that screwed me over. I'd kick them in the nuts. But but you know what? The experience I wouldn't change for the world, because it really does teach you that you can get, you know, back up. You can get back on the ball, no matter what. Like in Canada, we had it's a 7-year. You can't get a credit card or anything. How do you finance it? So everything you had to do as an entrepreneur, you had to do it. You had to be twice as sharp, you know, to try to get around the system to get financing or to get cash flow, or, you know. So no, I wish I didn't have to go through it, but I don't know. It sounds really bad, but yeah, I'd probably live it all over again.
Yeah.
I agree 100%, Norm.
And if you want us to, we can track these guys down and still hold them down and let you kick them in the nuts if you really want.
That would be awesome. I hope they're listening.
We could have them on the next podcast, Norm, and then we'll bring you on. It'll be a surprise.
Yeah.
Gotcha,
Yeah.
journalism. And
There
now look who we have for you.
It reminds me of the old Geraldo Rivera clip, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Jerry Springer.
Yeah, to answer the question, so I'm actually quite embarrassed by it, but my biggest challenge and was, something that caused a tremendous amount of stress at the time was, pretty much my only business has been my Amazon business since I started it. And that was in 2012, 2013. And I was fortunate, the business grew extremely quickly. 3 or 4 years into it, I was doing millions of dollars in revenue, and I got a Amazon loan invitation for a $500,000 one-year term loan, which I applied for. I got it, and I used the $500,000 to make extremely speculative inventory purchases that I had no sales data on, no familiarity with the category, and a lot of the stuff didn't sell. It was restricted. There was all sorts of problems, and I was by the skin of my teeth that close to filing for bankruptcy, and I was lucky I didn't. But at the same time, I had 2 kids 2 years apart, and it was horrible. I mean, I barely slept. I would sleep 3 or 4 hours a night for at least a year, and it's hard. I mean, it's hard when you have kids. Right away, Norm, when you mentioned that you, I guess, were driving home from the hospital or had a young child, when you had that experience, that was the same thing for me, and that just compounds it even more because it's not just you as a parent. There is a tremendous amount of stress to provide for your family, and when you're, and for me too, I kept it pretty much a secret. I didn't project that financial stress out. My wife didn't know about it. My family didn't know about it because I didn't want to put that stress on them. But it's hard. I mean, it's definitely hard when you're keeping it to yourself. But just like I asked you that question, I would not change that experience. If, going back, it was a great thing that I went through it, and I'm glad I did. So,
That's a good point, Brendan. Oftentimes, entrepreneurs, whether it be Amazon sellers, consultants, musicians, concert organizers, or whatever it is you do, McLean. No, I'm just kidding. We often suffer in silence because we have this like grandiose plan. Like, I'm going to get through this, and I have a plan A, B, C, D, and sometimes you get down to like plan A, B, B, 2, 1A, and you're like, okay, I got to tell somebody about this. But I think we do often suffer in silence, maybe more so than normal employees, so to speak.
Yeah.
Even as I'm impressed as all males, you guys are admitting this stuff, because it's also a man thing. I think men have a lot of ego when it comes to admitting any kind of defeat or not success. So I personally really appreciate you guys being candid and honest about it. It's pretty refreshing, really. But on a happier topic, okay, so the point of all this is to not just be a cry session, but to also talk about what lifts you up. And Norm and I have a unique relationship where we just send each other music videos. That's our relationship. It's just talking about music. And it always makes me, and it's a great way to bond with people, and it's a great way to get to know someone. And that's one of the reasons, Andrew, I wanted you on the show, and Norm, because I think for me, music plays such an integral role in me getting through good stuff, bad stuff, boring stuff. It's just, nothing really speaks to you the way music can, or get you in the right mood the way music can. So I thought maybe, Norm, since we kind of were picking on you today specifically, why don't you just give us an idea about like what your relationship is with music, if you go to shows a lot, what music you like, and how it's impacted your life.
I love going to concerts, and I have a very eclectic style of music. Just pretty much anything, and when I do find a new genre of music, it's like this, wow, another door opens, and there's just, you can't get enough of it. I watched a show, The Fisherman's Friend, about shanty songs. All of a sudden I'm getting all this shanty music and just going down that path. But I listen to music especially for creative or focus. So like if I'm trying to focus on something, I'll put on like usually some jazz music. It'll be Charlie Parker or Miles Davis or something like that. If I want to be creative, I usually turn to Cirque du Soleil. I have a collection of Cirque du Soleil albums that I play, and I love their music. But if I'm trying to be creative, I listen to Frank Zappa usually, and that whole side of things. But I go from, and let's talk about the concerts for a second. I was at the Montreal Forum in 1976 with Pink Floyd when the Pigs let loose and went through the Montreal Stadium roof. I was at a Grateful Dead concert at Rochester, New York, and I thought I was hallucinating, but there was a hallucinating.
You were at a Grateful Dead concert, Norm.
Is that because you were sleep deprived, Norm? Were you hallucinating?
That's the reason, and I'm going to stick to that story. But there was a coffin in the back, coffin company. I'm watching the Grateful Dead on stage, and there's a coffin company behind the music. And then, and then the other place that I really loved back in late 70s, I went to, I think it was one of the original Jamaica reggae Sunsplash concerts with the Wailers were there, Jimmy Cliff, I mean, all these guys. And it was really cool just kind of taking that all in. But I love music. Anything. I'm always listening to music.
Right on.
What would you say is that, and I'll ask you all this, but what is that one song that got you through anything bad in life? Everyone has that one song that got you through your worst heartbreak or just a bad time in your life. What would yours be?
Well, I can tell you after 2009, it's not a song, it's an album, Sublime. You know, their Garden Grove album. I used to listen, I still do listen to that. It triggers me. It's great. Prior to that, it's hard to say any one song. That would be a tough one. It would be all over the map. But I can tell you that, within the last 10 years, if there's one album that came up, the other one too, like if I'm working out or doing it, working out. When I worked out many years ago, it would be it would be along the lines of the Ramones. But another type of, I don't know if you guys like this, but the Pogues. Do you know the Pogues?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love the Pogues. That is like if I can play any one of their albums, and that would pick me up. I love them.
Nice. Andrew, before you get into what you listen to, why don't you, because we haven't talked about what music you play or your band play. I mean, I know because I know you, but why don't you kind of get into what you like to play and how you got into that genre?
Well, I came from kind of a country music background. I was born in Louisiana, and then moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico in elementary school. Nice. And then ended up in Colorado in fourth grade when I met McLean. McLean's actually the reason why I was able to go to that school, if you recall. This is off topic, but they needed another girl in order to let another male into the class because it was so skewed number of guys to girls. I couldn't enter the class unless they found another girl to enter the class. And so we both entered the class the same year.
Fourth grade.
Yeah, and that's
year I actually kicked you in the nuts because we were playing Foursquare. We were playing Foursquare and you cheated and I kicked you for that. And I got in so much trouble. But secretly my mom was like, hell yeah, he probably deserved it. And you did.
I probably did. I probably did. But so yeah, my family, my mom was really into horseback riding and country music, especially pop country back then. Not some artists that I'm particularly fond of these days, but I listened to a lot of like Tim McGraw and Kenny Chesney because that was popular around horse shows and things like that my mom would go to. And I liked a lot of Billy Joel and like Elton John as well as my musical taste started to progress. I took little piano lessons here and there, but that didn't really stick. And then in high school, after I got expelled, I got exposed to the Grateful Dead and the Allman Brothers and
Love them.
widespread panic and the string cheese incident and all these quote unquote jam bands that kind of drove me off the deep end for a while there. And then after college, I got to know some of the string cheese incident guys just because I was going to their shows all the time. I think I've ended up seeing about 200 of their concerts at this point. And realized I wanted to play myself. I had studied creative writing in college at Middlebury and in high school, so I definitely knew I had an English background to begin with. Thought I wanted to be an author, a novelist, while I was really going to college. And then as I picked up the guitar and started taking some guitar lessons on the side, eventually I dropped out of college to quote unquote go write my book.
Okay, Kerouac.
which I think technically, I believe I had already written that book in high school. So I think it was just a big scam to get out of the system. But and then came back to Colorado, started working as a ski instructor in Vail, a children's ski instructor, which just drove me absolutely nuts. That was not a good fit. And decided to start the music festival that summer, very small, out at State Bridge Lodge on the Colorado River, to about 200 people. And one of the musicians that came and played became my guitar instructor. His name's Scott Law. He lives out in Portland, Oregon, and he plays with Phil Lesh from the Grateful Dead, most notably. And started doing Skype lessons and kind of weekly sessions. Sometimes we would do a week-long intense session out on a property on the Colorado River, and really just kind of going to guitar camp and really just immersing myself in music. And the literature and creative writing aspect was already there. I just needed to pair it with something. And so that's kind of how I got into music. And that was really a bluegrass festival when it started. It's kind of evolved into more of a country rock and other things, just kind of bluegrass to, whatever you'd like to see in the late night setting at 4 a.m. And everything in between.
Yeah.
And my band, I would call it country rock, alt country. When people hear the words country music right now, they think of the CMAs and some artists that I'm not particularly fond of. The country music I'm fond of is people like Sturgill Simpson, Tyler Childers, Margot Price, and then bluegrass musicians like Molly Tuttle, Billy Strings, Green Sky Bluegrass. The Little Smokies are great. But for my own music, I've tried to stay as far away from bluegrass as I can, just because I'm not an inspiringly technical guitar player, which bluegrass is pretty technical stuff. And some of those bands that I just mentioned are very, very, very technically proficient. And so we've leaned more toward the country rock and roll. But it's hard to describe your own music. So
hey Andrew,
talk about it.
hey Andrew, have you ever heard of the Dead South?
Oh yeah, they're Canadian, right?
Yeah, they are incredible, man.
Mm-hmm.
I love them. Anyway, if you haven't heard of them, guys, check them out. The Dead South. I am not a promoter. I don't get a dime for that, but they're getting it done.
I have heard of them. We talked about booking them at one point, and we did not, but
I love their tune, In Hell I'll Be in Good Company.
Nice. Yeah. They're great. They're playing Red Rocks these days, so we probably missed our opportunity to grab those guys when we could.
Never know. Maybe they'll see this podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, we're super famous, so
huge.
Yeah.
We have like 26 followers on YouTube now, so
huge.
Nice. But to summarize all that with what my I couldn't give you a song, one particular song that's gotten me through hard times. I can give you an album though, as Norm suggested. I love Garden Grove too. That's a great choice. But I think Tom Petty Wildflowers is probably. They just did a re-release of that a couple months ago and added an entire additional album, an additional A and B side. So now that record, is like over 30 songs, unreleased originals that they added to the original release, and then as well as home recordings and some unreleased live stuff. But if you haven't checked out the new Wildflowers, that's what I would say. That whole piece is certainly been my go-to during the pandemic.
Do you like to feel as a musician, like obviously different stuff kind of gets you off being a musician, but would you say one of the most rewarding things is that you have people like us coming to you saying, oh my God, this music that you created has gotten me through some hard stuff, or, like you've made an impact on my life because of your music?
Well, I mean, yeah, if anyone ever says that to us, that we definitely take it to heart, because that's why we're trying to do what we're doing here. But it's an interesting dichotomy there, because you're writing music, or at least in my own personal experience, I'm writing music for myself, and it's not necessarily meant for another person. And so if someone does enjoy it, then that's a great, just kind of the icing on the cake, I guess. But, the intention is always I'm writing something for myself, or I'm trying to get something out, or understand some aspect of why I do something, or, or the human condition. But so.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's just it's like, man, what's the balance between writing something that I think people are going to enjoy and I'm writing this song because it's something that I just have to do.
It's like the difference between art and design, right?
Right.
Am I designing a product, or am I creating a piece of art? It's like somewhere in the middle sometimes.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of the people that are seeing tremendous success these days in the music industry are probably leaning towards the latter statement there.
Yeah.
Where, there's a concept in mind, there's an audience in mind, there's a business plan behind it.
Yeah. Brendan,
Yeah, I feel bad even trying to delve into this topic. I know you guys are, super musical. I'm more of a podcast guy myself. So, I don't have too much to add on that subject.
Dan?
Yeah, so I have a little bit more. I am not musically inclined in any way. I jokingly say I play the electric triangle, but if that were a real thing, I'd probably screw that up too. I will say that I am often emotionally moved, sometimes to tears, by music, in a good way, in a bad way. Goosebumps, that whole shot. I read an article once that said not everyone can be moved emotionally or to goosebumps from music, and I thought, wow, how sad that they can't, because there have been a multitude of artists that have moved me that way. I can tell you that when I want to get pumped up, I listen to something really fast, and I like a lot of commercial music. You guys are probably gonna hate on me for it, but like the screaming guitars of AC/DC, Metallica, or like the wizardry of some of the older Beatles stuff, and anything from the Miss You Rolling Stones album, but I also like rap, kind of older rap, or like Sugar Hill Gang, which is probably, I'm the only one that knows them. NF.
I know my old school hip hop. I actually listen to a lot of old school hip hop. Believe it or not.
SUGAR. We go by the name of the Sugar Hill Gang because that's who we are. Right? So it just feels good. It has like a nice 70s upbeat groove to it. But like some of the newer rap stuff, like some of the anything from Eminem, NF, Chameleonaire. I mean, on and on and on. But like on my playlist, I have polka. I have Disney songs. One of my most listened to songs in my Spotify is the theme song to the Jeffersons. Yeah, we're moving on up. Yeah. So like I get inspired by songs, and if it hits me, I don't care where it's from, what it is. If it's a good piece of music and it moves me, it goes into the list, and I'll listen to it over and over again, because it's always, especially with some faster music, you pick up different stuff every time. Like, oh, I didn't, or if you're listening to it on a different audio system, you'll hear something in the background and be like, oh, I never heard that they had that little thing in there. Or, like Michael Jackson was really good for that. He would put in a lot of like little sounds and pops and things like that. So, music for me is, it's the soundtrack of your life. I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, on that note, I really appreciate you guys for coming on. I could talk about music for another 5 hours, but I don't think our listeners have that time. Yeah, I think we're good on that. But I really appreciate all of you for opening up about, your trials and tribulations throughout life. Andrew, a special thank you for coming on. I know you didn't know what you were getting yourself into, talking with all us Amazon nerds. So
All good. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it was great having you on. Norm, per usual, love seeing you. Thank you so much for also delving into your hardships. I think these conversations are really important, because we talk so much about the technicalities of running e-commerce businesses, but we don't really delve into the actual stresses that everyone goes through. And I think that the more people that share their challenges and their obstacles, the more it gives people that are just starting off, especially, to think, okay, it's not the end of the world if this happens, or, like everyone goes through ups and downs. Even if you're a famous musician like Andrew Mcconaughey, even he has his so
Sure.
appreciate it all. I'm going to let everyone go around the room one more time and plug your business and reintroduce yourself. Andrew, why don't you tell us about your band real fast and about that.
Yeah, Andrew Mcconaughey from The Drunken Hearts. It's thedrunkenhearts.com. And yeah, really appreciate you guys having me on the show. And I'll probably go make my bed after this.
When you said you stream every few weeks, is that on your website? Is that how people can find you?
That will be through the band's Facebook page, which is just facebook.com/thedrunkenhearts. And on Instagram as well, it'll be through my personal Instagram, which is @drunkheart. And it'll be simultaneously through those two feeds, Facebook and Instagram.
We'll make sure to put your links at the bottom of this video when we publish it. So people can.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Norm?
All right. So people can reach out. They can see me at Norm Ferrari, aka the Beard Guy. I also have a podcast called Lunch with Norm. It's on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
Awesome. Brendan?
Yep. Rebate.com, a launch platform for e-commerce sellers. We support product launches on Amazon, Walmart, eBay, Etsy, and independent websites.
And Daniel?
Dan Trumbull, DanTrumbleConsulting.com, HNIC, Head Nerd in Charge. Go download one of Andrew's songs to help support musicians.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. And McLean Warren here with Liaison Marketing, and all Amazon-focused company that does PPC, listing optimizations, photography, and videography. Again, thank you all for coming on, and remember to make your beds, drink your 4 cups of coffee, and breathe into life, because it's never that bad.
Right.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Take care.